So last two classes, we have spoken about who managers are, and we have also discussed what functions they perform, like planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. In the first chapter, we also discussed roles that managers play, different kinds of roles, informational roles, interpersonal roles, and decisional roles that Henry Mintzberg speaks about. So we also discussed the different types of skills that managers require, like human skills, technical skills, and conceptual skills. So we did discuss that in chapter one. Chapter two, we also discussed diversity and other things like external environment and we have to consider the political, economic, social, technology aspects. So the environment factors are important. So and how are they dealing with that? External environment. What do they do? How do they cope? And how do they make decisions? And how do they make sure that they're efficient and effective at the same time? So today we also have certain other managerial issues that we will focus on. So the learning objectives for today's class is understanding globalization. I think you are all familiar with that. And what kind of impact does it have on organizations, globalization itself? And we also will discuss on how society's expectations are influencing what managers do and how do they actually take decisions and basically expectations on organizations. How does it influence companies? How does it influence managers? That's another thing that we will discuss today. And the third learning objective for this chapter is discuss the factors that are involved with both ethical and unethical behavior at the workplace. I think a very important thing for all of us, wherever we belong to, that we understand ethics is important, that we do not ignore ethics in business, and to create societies, to create businesses that are ethical and function based on sound ethical principles. I think that's the key. We don't want to create a society nor create organizations that are irresponsible and do things which harm everyone. All the stakeholders, get hurt by unethical companies and organizations. So that's the third learning objective for today. And the last one, describe how workforce is changing, the nature of the workforce, diversity in the workforce, and the use of technology and how we can manage this kind of diversity using the technologies in a better way. So that's a brief introduction to the learning objective. So the first one, obviously, we are going to discuss about globalization and its impact. And I'm sure you all realize that globalization is something that has come to stay for a long time. The fact that we can do business, a Japanese company can manufacture in Thailand, it can procure material from China, it can also assemble its products in Vietnam, and it can sell their finished products in India, Brazil, or Russia, or even US. I think that's a clear case that the world has become one global village. It's boundaryless, literally, where goods and services, as well as people, we can move easily. So, goods and services are produced across the globe. We can hire and acquire talent from global market spaces. We can make sure that we have the best talent working for us wherever they belong. We can hire them. And obviously, we can raise money from everywhere across the globe. We don't have to depend only on one country where we can find investors and raise money for doing our business. We can get it from across the globe again. And where do we sell products? We do sell products everywhere. It's not that, historically we had the barter system where we produced a particular product and we had to exchange those products for other products that are produced in the same place, the same region. We couldn't actually sell across. We couldn't export. We could not trade online. Importing was difficult. It took time, and travel was not easy. Those gone are those days. With today, the whole world is one global village. It's funny because if you go to Dubai, if you happen to go to Dubai, and I'm sure some of you have already visited Dubai, you have one place called Global Village there in Dubai. Anybody familiar who have visited Global Village in Dubai?
Yes, yes.
So you can share your experience, Fatima, instead of me telling about Global Village in Dubai.
The global village in Dubai has like every country there. like every Middle East country and some of the country like China, I think. And I went there before, like 5 years ago, and it was very amazing. Like every country have its own culture, and like the building, it's like the same as the country, and everything there, buy it there, like they sell it there. It's from the original country. Like from the China, you can see like Chinese tea and the clothes of the Chinese people and all this stuff. So it's really amazing thing.
Yeah, because Fatima explained it. Thank you, Fatima. You explained it really well. This is how the global village looks like. So you have representation, say, from Africa. You have representation from, I think this is perhaps Russia. This is from India. Or, you have all kinds of places that are represented there in Dubai, and it's really good. You have products there, you have the culture exhibited there. You have certain food products like honey and unique stuff from across Morocco, Algeria, plenty of the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa region, and also you have countries like India and China and Russia represented there. So in a way, somehow it resonates with what we were speaking about global village. The whole world is one global village because we can make products and we can create services and you can consume it anywhere. So, products that are manufactured across the globe are available at your doorstep because of online shopping possibilities. And Amazon is a classic example that they can procure from across the globe. I keep ordering stuff from, I'm expecting today a shipment to arrive from the Prague. It's strange, if 20 years ago, if somebody told me you could buy something from the Czech Republic and from the Prague, I wouldn't even believe it. Like how can I get some stuff from there? So today everything is possible. You can acquire stuff online everywhere. So in its true sense, because of technology and the mobility of resources that we have, this whole globe today is a village. Yeah, that's what the next slide talks about. Exchanging goods and services with consumers in other countries has become possible. You can acquire talent and hire people, the best of people from across the globe. I think the UAE, United Arab Emirates, is a classical example of it. 90% of its population is expatriates. And these expatriates are smart people who are coming from different parts of the world. They're scientists, doctors, professors, you name it, they're there in every field. IT engineers, software engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, energy management because they're into oil industry. So oil and gas experts. There are people from everywhere. Construction is so huge in the Middle East, including Saudi and Qatar and all these countries. You need the best of engineers. You need the best people from dredging. I know, several projects in Dubai and in the Middle East where they get the best dredging companies across from Norway, from Sweden, from Finland. And there are companies like Samsung, for example, they're into construction business, Samsung into construction business in the Middle East. And there are hundreds of Chinese companies right now in Abu Dhabi. For example, they are building something called as a midfield terminal. It's a massive airport that they're creating there, and it's about $3 billion project, I believe. And if you look at the number of companies across the globe that are involved in creating this world class infrastructure in several locations, it's a great opportunity. These businesses are exciting, and so to me, the world has so many opportunities. You don't have to restrict yourself to the country you were born or you were raised. You have the whole globe at your disposal because talented people, that's what this point says, using managerial and employee talent from other countries. That's a reality today, and that's why it's globalization. As I said, you can raise money from across the globe. You could raise money from New York Stock Exchange. You can get it listed. If you're listed somewhere in Europe, you could get raise funds there if you want to choose to. And you can, that's the meaning of raising financial resources and other resources from outside the home country, including raw material. Other resources are raw material. Not everything gets manufactured in one location these days. You may have the processor made in some other country, you might have the screen made in some other country, you may have the the chassis of the particular electronic item manufactured somewhere. The raw material has been procured from Africa and Australia. So that's the key. Globalization means material can move, goods can move, services can be offered across the globe. Talent and managerial talent and human talent can be acquired anywhere across the globe. And that's the beauty, and you can raise money from across the globe. So how do organizations go global? It's completely up to you as a company. Suppose you own a small startup company, it's not necessary you do everything by yourself. The core activity, say design elements, can be done by your company because that's proprietary information. You don't want anybody else to have access to that kind of proprietary information. But what do you do with stuff that are not core, that are not central to addition of value? Something that you can outsource. And the example that's there right beneath the slide, it's talking about a hospital in Massachusetts, which outsource radiologists from India. So radiologists in India are used to interpret the CT scans. So, a hospital, the Massachusetts General Hospital, is using the inputs and, the expertise of Indian radiologists. That's a classical example of global sourcing. You could do outsourcing of your HR, you could do outsourcing of your IT requirements, back-end operations, customer sales, and representatives, agents that answer customer calls. Banks and other companies are doing the same thing. You have 24/7 customer care service. It's only because you're outsourcing some of it to India, you're outsourcing some of it to, say, Nigeria. You could do plenty of outsourcing. That's what we call as global sourcing. You might look as if you're a company that's an American company, but maybe 50% of your operations are happening outside of the United States. IBM is a classical example of that. It's an American company, huge American company. 80% of its operations are outside of the US. So this is global sourcing. IBM has big offices in Bangalore. IBM has massive units in Hyderabad, in Pune, in Bombay, in India. And likewise, all other big companies. Microsoft has a huge operation presence in Hyderabad. Apple has opened their backend operations and stuffs to support their maps. Apple is not as good as in maps and as in Google is. And so map services are being developed in India. And Apple, I think, is now even getting manufactured. Some of their devices get manufactured in India. So this is what we call as global sourcing, either material or manufacturing or human resource, whatever you want to do, you could globally source. The second way, of course, this requires minimal, investments. The second way is exporting and importing. I would think that's a great opportunity if you want to start up your own business. Suppose you have connections in China, let's assume. Why not you import from China? You'll get it for much cheaper prices. It could be furniture, it could be household decor, it could be kitchen stuff. Everything gets manufactured in China. So if you just want to import and then hope to sell in the US, it's a great opportunity to have your own business. As long as you have a company registered and you know the legal requirements, what kind of experience is required to manage an organization that's global, and how do you keep control while delegating important responsibility to assets in areas that you cannot be in? That's a good question, Tanvir. I mean, right now, a few years ago, I would have said you need a lot of experience to do that because you need to understand the market spaces. It would take time. You would probably commit some mistakes and then you have to learn fast, not repeat the same mistakes. I would have said you need 10 years of experience, 5 years of experience. But right now, because you have access to technologies, information is at your fingertips. It doesn't require you maybe a couple of years because you just want to have a feel of the market space. You want to build some contacts, have some networks that you can trust on, and then you can have your own small startup company, whether it's online or whether it's actually importing stuff, get some shipments from China, and you know how to sell it online. If you have a warehouse and if you can tie up with one of those shipping companies, you can actually take orders, make sure your systems are secure, financial transactions between customers and you, the banking transaction, credit card transactions are all secure. and you could start selling. So you all that you need is to create a website domain, and of course the layout is important. The entire range of products. Make sure you're pricing it properly, and then you ensure that your customers can track their shipments, and you have a return policy, and of course their financial details, credit card details must be secure. So I think putting up that kind of domain, having an online system, and then you know having a warehouse where you can put your procurements from China and store it. You have to be smart. You can't simply bring everything from China because you might not be able to sell everything. But you got to look at what's really required. Say, face masks right now are in high demand in the US, in every country. So can you import and sell? So make money just importing. So that's doesn't require too much of experience. Of course, you still have to establish a company, know the documentation that has to be done, the legal framework that is applicable in the US, and you got to know about the importing policies and the taxes that you need to pay. You need money, of course. So all that is definitely required. So how many years of experience? A couple of years of experience, some access to finances, some good connections for you to establish a business, a proper domain, and good security and firewall systems. All these are essentials, even if you're just importing. If you're manufacturing something, it's a different story. You need a little bit of more experience because design elements are there, assembly line elements are there. Establishing a manufacturing location takes more time. Like commissioning the project, plant capacity utilization, staffing your manufacturing, making sure productivity is high, that you maintain quality standards, you know what to do with packaging, quality testing, and then packaging. And how do you keep your workforce happy? How do you compensate them? There are plenty of other things. If you're a manufacturing company and then planning to export, you produce a product here in the United States and export, that requires a bit more experience. I wouldn't say just 2 years. I'll probably put 5 to 7 years till you understand everything and you're on firm footing where you can start your own company. Now, that's what I'm talking about: exporting and importing. Importing is pretty much easier. Global sourcing, I can get all my, some of the activities that I don't think is a core for my business. I can get it done in India for much cheaper price, more effectively, because they're all trained engineers out there. So I explained to you global sourcing, exporting and importing. And then when you come back to licensing, there's a nice example here when it comes to licensing. It's right here. It talks about a beer manufacturing. It's a brewer, Anheuser-Busch. This is a company that they brew beer, and then they make a product called Budweiser. And they have foreign brewers like Labatt in Canada and Kirin in Japan. They give them the license to make the product there. So you can do that if you want to give a license to some other manufacturers to manufacture your product and sell there. You get a licensing fee. But the thing is, you want to make sure you understand the licensing agreement. You're a big brand that somebody wants to pay you a licensing fee. That doesn't happen that easily. You've got to build a brand, and when Coca-Cola does that, Pepsi does that. They actually license local bottling companies in India, in China, across the globe. There are plenty of other companies that manufacture on behalf of Pepsi and sell their products, and they have the same quality and stuff. And what do they get? What does Pepsi get in return? Licensing fee, which runs into millions of dollars, literally. Then franchising, this is a thing that you're all very familiar with. KFC, Dunkin' Donuts, Subway, they go with the model. So if you happen to go to a KFC in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, it's exactly the same structure, the same layout, the same menu, a little bit of customization, some additional, food items that are sold there. The range gets a little bit more customized. Some extra additions are there, but the format, the way the food is actually prepared, and the quality standards, pretty much the same. KFC, McDonald's, Subway, all these places, Dunkin' Donuts, they look pretty much exactly the same. Tim Hortons, if you go to Dubai again, Tim Hortons in New York, Tim Hortons, they're pretty much the same. I like the taste here. I'm being honest. The taste is much better off here, but more or less the same format. And this is what is franchising. What do they get? I could be a franchisee, If, say, KFC is the franchisor, I could buy a KFC franchise. I could be the franchisee in Abu Dhabi and open my own KFC outlet. What does KFC get? A franchising fee, a royalty. I have to pay them every year X amount of dollars for using their name, for using the format, for using their operating methods, for letting me, sell on the same brand name. So obviously, I have to pay them royalty. Whether I get business, don't get business, I still have to pay KFC. So that's where you become global. KFC started somewhere and they're globally present now. McDonald's, American company, present everywhere. You go to Vietnam, you go to Thailand, you go to Australia, you go to Greece or Norway or Finland or Brazil or whichever country you go, you find McDonald's. So obviously that means that's one strategy. Franchising is one possible strategy of becoming a global company. Then you come to something called a strategic alliance. Now, when you have a joint venture or a strategic alliance, two companies which are very good in something come together. The reason they come together is to form that kind of alliance, share core competences, and work on something that's unique and high tech. Any innovation is possible when two companies come together, share their knowledge and competences, and create some unique products. And that you find the example that's there in your slides is about General Electric and Honda Motors coming together to work on jet engines. So because you know that General Electric is a company that manufactures jet engines, aircraft engines, that is what General Electric produces. So GE actually tied up with, in a strategic alliance, they have a tie-up with a Japanese company called Honda Motors, and they worked on improving on the technologies that go into manufacturing aircraft engines. So that's a lot more investment, greater resource sharing, more sharing of best practices, and of course there is higher risk because you're producing something all new and you want that to succeed. So the risk gets higher as you go higher, the investment becomes higher, the risk is also getting higher. Then you have foreign subsidiary units. Now, if you look at, say, a Korean car manufacturer, Kia Motors. Now, if you go to South India, you will find Kia Motors. This is a proper South Korean car manufacturing company. Kia has set up their own manufacturing location in India. Huge, massive. But it's called Kia India Motors. It's not Kia Motors, it's Kia India. And same is the case with Volkswagen, and they have manufacturing locations in India. They have global. They have in Africa, they have in Australia, they have in India. So all these are classical examples of foreign subsidiaries. That means it's a huge amount of investment. You're creating a manufacturing location from scratch. So there's plenty of investment going in creating the shop floor, the manufacturing locations, accommodations, and then you have to hire people. It's huge. The risk is massive. Investments are big. But there must be a reason because governments are happy to call in foreign investors because they're creating local employment opportunities. They're generating to the economic well being of the communities that they serve. So there are plenty of governments which are very welcoming. They give them, allocate them land, they give them a tax holiday, they support all the clearances are fast. There's one stop shop where you can get all your clearances from the environment boards, registrations, licenses, all are given very quickly because money is flowing into the country. You're creating economic activity, you're generating employment. And then when you sell, you're also actually bringing in some foreign currency back home. So obviously, foreign subsidiaries are encouraged to come to other countries because it just supports their economy. Any questions here? Okay, we can go to the next one. So types of global companies, you can have different types of global companies. The first one is being multi-domestic. Now, if you talk about multi-domestic companies, these are companies that initially start off in one country and then they start operating in other countries. Suppose you take Orange, or you take perhaps Orange is a mobile services company, or you take for example Etisalat, or these are all mobile, like how you have Verizon here and T-Mobile here and AT&T here. I'm talking of other countries where you have mobile service companies. and they can actually expand their operations. Suppose Etisalat now can doesn't have to confine themselves to United Arab Emirates. They might find they can operate in, say, Saudi. They can might operate in Algeria. They have gone into India as well. So this now becomes a classical case of multi-domestic. It's a UAE, Abu Dhabi based company, but then they know how to make some small changes for African markets. They know how to serve the Indian market. They know how to make changes for the remaining Middle Eastern countries. That's a smart thing to do. So again, each country is treated as if it's a separate business, and each country has obviously different customers. So there is some customization for the local customers' needs. That's what multi-domestic companies do. Now, then you come down to the second type of global company, which are called also as transnational companies, where geographical boundaries don't matter really. And the reason why they do that is because they are dependent on something called as efficiencies, and that makes them effective. Because I can give an example, like say for example, Sony Corporation, which is a Japanese company. They have their manufacturing in Thailand, they manufacture in Vietnam, they manufacture plenty in China. They're Japan. They also manufacturing in Japan because Japan they manufacture sensors, but the actual assembly of their cameras or televisions happens in China, and some of their camera models get assembled in Thailand, and some of them get put together in Vietnam. So this is a classical example of transnational organization. It can also fit into the last category, global, because whatever Sony Corporation is doing, suppose they're manufacturing, global companies have one great product. It just is fit for every other country because that way they're talking of global efficiencies. They don't say, oh, we are Japanese companies, so we have to stay back in Japan. Sony's presence is big in the United States. It's big in Europe, and obviously it's big in Japan. It's big in Asia. So transnational companies are those companies which don't have these geographical boundaries. But then global companies are those companies that want to operate in several locations, several countries, because they want to leverage that kind of benefits. So wherever it's cheaper to produce, wherever they can get raw material, wherever they can realize the efficiencies, operational efficiencies, they'll go there. I'll tell you a funny little story about Sony and my experience with Sony as a global corp. See, generally, I used to be under the impression when I was living in Abu Dhabi, I used to think, oh, electronic products are much cheaper in the United States, especially if it is cameras and expensive cameras. So I would always look at B&H and Adorama and Best Buy and Amazon.com and all the US websites for looking for a Sony high-end expensive camera. I would also look at the Abu Dhabi sites for Sony. Like the Dubai Mall has a Sony outlet, I'll look there. I would never look at India website for Sony because I always assumed because of the taxes in India, import duties in India, Sony cameras are going to be expensive in India. I never bothered to look at the Indian website. I'm giving you a personal example. Accidentally, one of those days, what I did, I went to Dubai Sony shop and I paid them advance, the pre-order booking for a particular camera. And I said, I'm happy. The price between US and Dubai is not too much. It's a little higher than US. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't have to wait. I'll get the first product in Dubai. Then accidentally I stumble upon the India website. Can you believe it's cheaper than US? Way cheaper than Dubai. And I'm like, really? So I call the India Sony, sales outlet, and I say, guys, you have on your website this price for this new camera that's still coming out. Is that true? He says, yes, sir, it's true. And then, he volunteered to say, if you want to pre-book, you want to make your order, we'll give you further discount. It's already cheaper than US, way cheaper than Dubai. And if I make a booking now, he says, as a special first customer, I'll give you more discount. I'm like, how? How is that possible? I never thought. And he told me, yes, Sony has a very different pricing strategy for India. In India, if they make it expensive, they cannot sell. They cannot sell when compared to Canon and Nikon, again, Japanese companies. So I'm like, wow. So I go to the shop in Dubai where I paid extra money, advance money. I said, I'm sorry, I'm traveling home to India. I don't want to take the camera from you guys. Just refund my money. So those guys, long faces, they just gave me my money back. I go home to India and buy Sony camera in India for much cheaper price than the United States. There you go. The most unexpected place to go and buy. And I did that. The reason I'm saying that is because Sony has a global presence. The strategies are different in different countries. Smart thinking. One good, same quality product. Whether I buy it in the United States, whether I buy it in Dubai, or whether I buy it in India, it's the same quality. The same number of megapixels, the same performance, the same durability, the same design, and everything. So these companies are those that want to realize global efficiencies. So, what is it like managing in a global organization? See, the fact that if you get a chance to work in a global company, you should never lose it, because as Tanvir was asking, what kind of experience do you require? If you work for a global company, your learning trajectory is very steep. You learn very, very fast because they're going to push you from. If it's an American company, your first assignment could be in Germany, and your next assignment could be, somewhere in Singapore. So imagine 1 year you work in Germany, you know their operations in US because it's an American company, and then you work next 1 year in Singapore. So obviously that means you're interacting with multicultural employees of the same company, but from different cultures and different positions and different locations. So working in a global organization, you cannot have this parochial attitude. You cannot look at it only from your eyes, but you got to have an empathy. You got to look at every problem, solution, or issues or challenges that you face in everyday life. You got to look at it from a different perspective. You can't simply look at it from your perspective alone. That includes how you are dealing with customers in Singapore. They are very different. How are your customers in Germany? They are very different. Their needs, their values, their expectations. And how are they in China? Very different. And how are your customers in United States? I mean, every country has its own unique culture. And that's the reason why you cannot look at it from your perspective. If you're Whether you're in design, whether you're in marketing, sales, you're talking for customer service, you cannot be only looking at it from your perspective. Working in a global company, you need to understand the cultural differences. You need to figure out what their unique expectations and needs are. You need to be respectful of their values. So that's the key. You cannot be parochial. If you are parochial, I mean, you could fail as a company and as an individual. Okay. And that's when we move to studying culture. Now, this is a very famous study done by Hofstede. And he did this study long time ago, but it is still very relevant. It's called the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness. It's a study of IBM employees that he did, but IBM employees were from different countries, several countries across the globe. This study was done a long time before. There are certain countries like India which don't figure in the study because long time ago Indians were not part of IBM workforce. So he did a study, but it's a very, very interesting study, the globe study, or the global leadership and org behavior effectiveness. He just focused, Hofstede, his name is here. Hofstede focused on the cultural dimensions of employees who were working for IBM. Now he figured out there are these dimensions of culture in among the employees at IBM. One he called assertiveness. He found that certain cultural background employees, if they were from the United States, they were very assertive. They were very strong, open-minded, and they're telling you something on your face. They're confrontational, they're assertive, extremely competitive. Would you agree? United States, people from the United States, if you're working in a company, you're assertive, you're competitive. I think Hofstede found the right thing. If you see United States being so successful as a country and the advancements that they've made in the industrial side and in all kinds of businesses, it's because they are being very, very competitive, extremely competitive. And United States was found to be, they rank very high. Egypt is moderate, and Sweden ranks low on the first dimension that Hofstede found, assertiveness. Future orientation, it's here right now. If you see below the slide, there are examples here. It shows how much, a particular country's people think about the future. Do they plan for the future? Do they save for the future? Do they invest for the future? And some countries, people from some countries don't bother too much of the future. They think about now. They're happy having, all that they want to have right now. They're not too worried or thinking they don't, plan for the future too much. And they found, I mean, his study found Canada ranks very high. Canadians, he found, think a lot about the future. They plan for the future. They save and invest for the future. Slovenia ranks moderate, and Russia ranked very low on future orientation. That means perhaps in his study, Russians were not that very concerned about the future. They were happy with what they were having right now. Gender differentiation. He had this dimension of culture. It shows the extent to which societies want to maximize gender differentiation, and this is also very relevant with when it comes to workforce composition. South Korea ranks very high, meaning that in South Korea, they've figured out certain genders do certain jobs better, other genders do other jobs better. So that's very high in South Korea. That's his study. Italy ranks moderate, and Denmark ranks low. I can actually share some personal experiences. When I visited Malaysia, for example, all the, you know, wherever you have these traffic toll gates, tax points on highways, all of them had women. So I'm like, wow, late in midnight, late at across 24/7, all these tax places where tax is collected on highways in Malaysia are all women. So, you sometimes think there are certain cultures where they believe women will do great in certain kinds of jobs. Maybe that's one of the cultural things. You never know. Yeah, that's how Hofstede's dimension of gender differentiation comes up. And then you have uncertainty avoidance. This is about societies in certain countries who want to, alleviate unpredictability. They want some sense of certainty. They do not like too much of uncertainty, too much of unpredictability. And Germany ranks very high on uncertainty avoidance. They want to make sure, 100% sure. I had a chance to work with, some German colleagues from a company called SKZ. There's a company called SKZ in Germany, and they have their operations in the Middle East. And we had the good fortune of doing a consulting assignment for them. And I can tell you for a fact that they're very, very meticulous, very strong on details. They plan really thoroughly because they do not want unpredictability. They don't want to let anything to chance. And Israel ranks moderate on that particular dimension. Hungary ranks low on that particular dimension. There's another dimension that Hofstede studied from his Globe research on IBM employees, which is called power distance. This is how a society expect members to, look at power that should be unequally distributed. Certain countries power is not same. I can tell you from my own personal experience, if in India, if I'm talking to my professor, I address him sir always. Good morning, sir. How are you, sir? I have a question, sir. Thank you, sir. What do you want, sir? It's because that's how much of power distance we have. I cannot call him by his first name. I cannot. And if he's my boss, no way. I have to call him sir because the power distance is huge. It's massive. Society in India wants power is unequal. Its distribution is not equal. Your boss is your boss, and you're a subordinate. You have to obey orders. You cannot question him that easily. In India, it's very, very high. Power distance is extreme. Thailand ranks high in his study, Hofstede study. England ranks moderate, and South Africa ranks low. Where do you put United States? Is it high or low?
Low.
Yeah, I would think it is low as well. I can call my boss with his name, and he's happy with it. And Hofstede continued his research, and he found certain societies or countries have a culture which is dominated by individualism, extremely individual goals, individual accomplishments, individual rewards. Certain societies and countries have culture dominated by collectivism. And he found out Greece to be extremely individualistic, Hong Kong to be moderately individualistic, and Singapore being very collectivistic. That means they would like to be part of teams, they have group goals, they have team rewards and recognitions, and they value that kind of team performance. So again, where do you think United States is? Are they more individualistic or are they more collectivistic?
More individualistic.
I think probably you're getting there. I'm asking questions which are pretty obvious. So thank you, Fatima. And Japan, for example, they have historically been known for extreme teamwork. They're very collectivistic in that sense. And the next one is even more interesting. It talks about in-group collectivism. Suppose this is strange, like the extent to which members of the society want to be together in a very close circle. So if you, when as soon as I came to New York, I lived in a place called Flushing, and if you ever happen to go to Flushing, you will see all the Chinese community members are together. They're doing businesses together, and that's fascinating. I'm a big fan of that. One Chinese member helping the other Chinese members to, come together, pool up resources, do businesses together, and share the profits together. That's in group. Maybe they're not calling in other community and other country people in that business, but it's all Chinese who are coming, and they're extremely successful at that. So in-group collectivism, again, Hofstede's finding, it shows China ranks very high, Qatar ranks moderate, and New Zealand ranks low. I think India also ranks low because we don't help each other that much these days. We have become, in-group collectivism is poor, which is not the best thing to do, I believe. So, but in-group collectivism in China is pretty high. So that's a good thing. That's how I look at it. And then you have performance orientation. There are certain societies that are driven by performance, achieving numbers, achieving sales. So you get recognition based because you're actually performing and you're excellent in something. In some countries, performance doesn't take the most important place in terms of recognition. So Hofstede found Taiwan is very high on this performance orientation, Spain is moderate, and Greece is low. And then last one is humane orientation. How you're kind, how you're honest, how you're, considerate to others, how altruistic are you, how much of charity you do, how much care you give for people in the society. That's humane orientation. And he found Indonesia ranks very high, Hong Kong ranks moderate, and France ranks low. Nothing against countries, and this is Hofstede, did this study many, many years ago. So if you actually repeated this study now, maybe these things would have changed a lot. And all those countries' performance on these dimensions would have changed as well, because cultures are always changing. They are not static. We discussed the role of culture in detail and the globe study, which is very important. I could possibly give that for the exam. Okay, so please make a little note. The globe dimensions of cultural differences is a very good topic for the midterm exam, for example. Then the next learning objective for today is how society's expectations are influencing managers and organizations. This is a classical example of a company called Atsana, and they produce baby care products, but they're big time into providing for child care and child heart diseases. They want to, provide for any child who's suffering from heart diseases. How could they support them to get the right medical treatment or surgeries done? So their caption is happiness goes from heart to heart. And that's how they put the logo there. They want to make a difference in children's life, and they want to put as many smiles back because children are the future of our societies. And this is a company called Atsana, and they produce Italian company which produces baby care products. And look at how they've positioned themselves. There's no product there. They're not talking about the company Atsana baby care products. No particular product is being shown here. This particular advertisement simply talks about happiness goes from heart to heart. And that's a classical example of how companies look at themselves, feeling more responsible, feeling, ways to give back to the society. That's where this is from society's expectations, because companies operate in societies. They are not operating in isolation. And that is where we come to the next topic called corporate social responsibility. Now, when a company goes beyond their economic obligation towards its shareholders, if I'm an investor in a company, I want profits, I want earnings per share, I want my stocks to do really well because I put money with you. But if a company goes beyond just maximizing my wealth and giving me maximum earnings per share, and a company goes beyond that and make sure that they take care of the planet, they take care of the people around them, and they indulge in a lot of charitable work and societal well-being activities. And that's what we call as CSR, corporate social responsibility. And I'm sure you all agree that CSR activities improve the brand image of the company, they increase the goodwill in societies. The governments that they are actually interacting with in those countries, they're very happy and welcoming because you're a socially responsible organization. And that's way much, CSR is way much beyond social obligations. Minimum social obligations are required by law. Suppose giving fair wages to your employees, and if there are women employees, they need childcare. And if there are a lot of employees, you might give some benefits like medical insurance, better in life insurance, maybe stuff like that, and all kinds of benefits like children education, all required by law. And you might do a little bit more than that, and that's what we call as social obligation. And eventually there's the last one, which is social responsiveness. Suppose there was in Japan a few years ago, as it always happens in Japan, they're hit by earthquakes, right? So when you have an earthquake, what do these global companies do to serve people who are hit by the earthquake, natural calamities and disasters? You had fires in California. So what do these big companies that are operating in California and other parts of the United States, what do they come and help people with? Those that have been ravaged by fires, they have lost their homes. So this is what is social responsiveness, where people are reacting to a specific natural calamity that has happened at a particular place. When an earthquake hit Japan, global supply chains were hurt. Many of the industries could not manufacture because a lot of components came from Japan. So, social responsibility is a very important thing. Can you explain CSR once again? Yeah. If you're doing something beyond legal and economic expectations that are, that the society expects from the company, that's what we call a CSR. Now, I can give you an example of the Korean car company called Hyundai. You know Hyundai, right? Hyundai is the South Korean car manufacturing company, and they do plenty of CSR. I've visited their plants and listening to their CEO and listening to their chief operating officer. They, what they do across wherever they're having their manufacturing location, they adopt many villages around the manufacturing location. Around 40-kilometer radius, they adopt all the villages. They provide them clean drinking water. They provide street lighting. They make sure they give them special ambulances wherever somebody requires emergency help. If they're, using their highways and roads in those villages, if they're met with an accident, there's somebody who can actually pick them up, take them to the, authorized healthcare centers. They have opened schools in those villages that they have adopted, and they provide free education for those who cannot afford paid education. So they give lot. They have laid roads for certain villages which don't have access to proper roads. They've even laid roads so that transportation is easy and that mobility is not hindered, and it can help these people who live in those villages to go back and forth from cities, or go forth from the schools or hospitals that they need to access. So all these extra things were not really required by or expected by the villages. That Hyundai, it's a Korean car manufacturing company operating in India, and they do so much. Imagine lighting up the streets, clean drinking water, and then roads, and free schools, and emergency services like ambulances. To me, that's CSR. If you have social obligations, I'll tell you how. Same company, Hyundai, they hire like 80% to 85% of their employees are Indians. So generating employment for Indians. And the best part, they didn't go to the top tier schools. They went to the second tier two schools, in India. So these students who are in engineering and computer sciences and mechanical engineering and production engineering, these kids never dreamt in their life they'll work for a Korean company. Not they don't belong to tier one schools, not the topmost. The second tier schools that they went to, they hired the good ones there, send them to Korea for training. It's a lot. You're changing the lives of hundreds and thousands of families. You gave their kid a great job, a great career. That means the sibling of this kid can study better, can have higher, better ambitions, can pursue their dreams. That falls under the second one called social obligations. And if there is a natural calamity, suppose a tsunami hit Chennai, Madras, where Hyundai has its operation, it's hundreds and thousands of people who became homeless. And this company donated in millions, literally in millions of dollars in building homes, in saving lives, in feeding people who are homeless. This is social responsiveness. Is that clear? So
Yes.
CSR is way much more encompassing. It covers everything literally, and it's beyond the social expectations and economic obligations that the company has to do. Social obligations, you have to take good care of your employees. Social responsiveness, when there is a calamity, are you reaching out and doing something to save the situation? CSR, everything. They do way beyond generating employment, taking care of people, creating the infrastructure, adopting villages, doing the emergency services, giving free education. This is way beyond, not just for employees, but for the communities that they're operating. CSR is way beyond employees, way beyond investors. That's what is CSR. Then we come to the important topic for today, which is sustainability. Now, every company wants to do business, generate revenue, make sales, and make profits. But you're using resources. See, there are three important P's. The first P is profits. Okay, every company wants profits. You can't make profits without people, and you can make profits by abusing the planet. All the three P's are important: planet, people, and profits. So I would put it that way: planet first, people, and then profits. You can't turn it around. That means it will not be sustainable. If you put profits first, people next, and we don't care for the planet, your model will not be sustainable. You will be, criticized, you lose the goodwill, you lose the brand reputation, you'll have sanctions from different governments globally, you will have these environmentalists who will protest against you, you will lose customer faith, they will give up on you because you're producing products which are not safe, which are not healthy, which are polluting the environment, which are hurting our health. So you want to be a company which is sustainable. Sustainable in the sense you take good you take good care of the resources that you're using. You're judicious the way you use the planet's resources. You're responsible, and then you actually take good care of your people, your employees, and your customers. And then you want to make profits as well. It's not that we don't care for the investors. We have to make profits. So I have another question. Like Apple, okay, I'll take your word. Here the example is Walmart. So they have embarked on a very ambitious. I think I'm sure they're doing it better now. This is 2017 kind of data. So this is a company which makes billions of dollars in revenues, and they have millions of employees and so many thousands of stores. So they had a sustainability goal of removing 20 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from supply chains by recycling, reusing, and using material which can be biodegradable. And the equivalent of more than taking off 3.8 million cars out of the road every year. So packaging material, for example, I'm sometimes intrigued when you order something on Amazon. If I'm ordering a little small, electronic or whatever device, they put that in a massive box. Have you seen that? And look at the amount of packaging material that's wasted. If it's a small little thing, why don't you package it in a smaller box? Or if I've made multiple orders, why do you send three different boxes? Why can't you put them in one box if that is doable? I think Amazon is right now doing it, which all other companies should do. reduce the amount of packaging material that's used, reduce the amount of plastic that gets used. Even if you got to use plastic that's biodegradable, that can be recycled or reused. Don't create this environmental waste, and don't create this, carbon footprint, the greenhouse gases. You got to be responsible as a company to stay sustainable. So sustainability is not just profits. Sustainability is of how you treat your customers and your employees, and sustainability is how responsible you are towards the planet itself. So all three are important. Profits, of course, definitely important. So sustainability, we want to achieve the goals, increase long-term shareholder value. That means you're producing smart products which are in demand, so that you can sell better, you can make more revenues, which means that you're integrating economic, environmental, and social opportunities. You can say these are exclusive, they all should be integrated together, and that is the meaning of sustainability. Quickly, I think we're running out of time. So the last objective for today's class is talking about ethics and how important ethics are in organizations. Now, obviously, a simple definition of ethics, set of rules or principles that tell us what is right as an organization to do, or what is right as a manager that you can do, and what are stuff that you shouldn't be doing. So obviously, I think every organization should stay ethical, right? We have to be ethical. So I can talk about hundreds of examples. Say Johnson and Johnson, initially when they had this medicine Tylenol, this is a classical textbook example. Tylenol was actually packaged in bottles and then sold off. And somebody had tampered with these Tylenol bottles that were being, sold in across different pharmacies. They were laced with cyanide. Tampering was done. Somebody put cyanide in some of those samples that were being sold, and people died. So Johnson, this is an old example that I'm giving you. So Johnson and Johnson, though it was not their mistake, somebody had actually tampered those samples that were being sold to customers. They made a massive recall, and that recall costed Johnson and Johnson tons of money. But they took the responsibility. They said no, because these bottles could be easily opened and somebody could tamper them. They introduced those aluminum foil packaging for their medicine, and they said we want to create packaging which cannot be tampered with. So Johnson and Johnson is saying, customers first, patients first, doctors first, babies, and then the baby products, whoever is using, parents first, mothers first, nurses first. All these people there, we cannot compromise on them. The way they design their products, even including the packaging is very nice, right? It has got mild colors, it's got soft corners, it's doesn't have things that can choke, kids. Everything is taken care of because they have a proper code of conduct or ethics code that they follow. So I think ethical practices really matter. You might lose money in the short term because you're trying to be ethical, but you build a stronger reputation, you build customer loyalty. So being ethical, it just pays off. And you have different views of ethics, how you can look at ethics. The first one is called the utilitarian view of ethics. So do something that's good for the greatest, that creates greatest good for the greatest number of people. Whatever you do, it has to benefit, the majority of the population that you're serving. You cannot do something that benefits only a few people. That becomes unethical. So whatever you do as an organization, it should benefit the majority. Maybe it cannot benefit every single individual. You do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. That is utilitarian view of ethics. So don't do something that creates harm to the greatest number of people. That does good to the greatest number of people. That is creating utility. And that's why it's called utilitarian perspective of ethics. The next one is rights. I think people who have lived here for long enough in the United States, you have right to free speech, you have right to free consent. So you have all these rights to privacy. Nobody can use your data, personal data, for something else without your permission, explicit permission. So privacy rights are very strong here, and you have legislations that protect that. So any practice that is violating these fundamental rights is basically unethical. If I'm your HR manager, I cannot collect data of your How many times you write emails, whom are you contacting, how many people you talk to, how many phone calls you talk to, how frequently do you call to XYZ individual. I cannot collect that data and use it without your permission. Right to privacy, right to your own personal data. So if I did something like that without your permission, I am, indulging in unethical behavior, unethical practices. It can have serious repercussions. You could have, lawsuits filed against you, long drawn battles in the court, and you could lose your reputation. You could lose your existing customers. Your best employees might leave your company. So plenty of things. Facebook, you know, selling data or indulging in transfer of data created a lot of problems for Facebook as a company. These things keep emerging, right? Theory of justice. Now, when you are actually in an organization as a manager, you have to follow the same procedure. You got to be fair and you have to be equitable. Treat every employee with the same procedure, with the same method, with the same technique of evaluation. So you got to be fair and just in your procedures. In your distribution of rewards, you must be fair. So unless if you're fair, you're ethical. If you're being, you know, prejudiced, if you're being biased, and if you don't follow the same procedures for all, you are actually indulging in unethical behaviors. These can be reported for discriminatory practices to Title IX, people. So and of course you have redressal. Yeah, so all these things define different views of looking at ethics. What determines ethical behavior? Morality, your own personal values, your personality, experience, organization culture, and issue being faced. So all these things determine ethical behavior, but beyond which you have what the organization can do. Create a code of ethics. Let people be part of creating that code of ethics. Let everybody know that this organization has a code of ethics. Ethical leadership. You need a leader who is transparent, who is willing to, come out in the open and tell you these are the practices that are being used. This is what is accepted, this is what is not accepted. So ethical leadership is important. You might want to train your employees that they have to follow those code of ethics, and then you might want to train your employees that any violation of ethics or code of ethics has to be reported. So training is important. Great leaders who can be role models, who are transparent, who are honest, who are truthful, who will not hide facts, who will not misrepresent information, who will not falsely state something. And that leadership is really required. And of course, a document, code of ethics, which is circulated, which is, reiterated and reinforced across all levels in the management is required. Being an ethical leader, I said that, you got to be a role model. Tell the truth, do not manipulate, hide information, and be willing to admit mistakes. Toyota, for example, they had a problem in their brakes in one of their cars, the Prius model. They had a few years ago, the Prius. Prius is a model of cars that Toyota manufactures. They had a problem with their braking system and they had a massive recall. And then the fact that the CEO of Toyota came out in the open in media and admitted their quality issues with the braking system. They had a massive recall. They fixed the problem, made sure customer safety is not being compromised. So admitting your mistakes is a clear sign of being, ethical leaders. So Toyota showed evidence that they were ethical leaders. Share your personal values by regularly communicating with your employees and stress the organization or team's important shared values. These values have to be shared: safety, quality, transparency. You have to be very clear. Use the reward system to hold everyone accountable to the values. So you can actually reward people who are ethical. You can, you know, withdraw these rewards if people are violating any of those values. Can ethics be taught? Yes, of course it can be taught. So value systems are learned by people who are young, and all of us as we grow in age, in school, in college, in businesses, we learn ethics. And it's very important because it just keeps your own continuity at the workplace and it contributes to the organization's reputation and brand image. So it has to be taught. Describe how the workplace is changing and its impact. I think we talked so much about that. One very important thing that we should be talking and discussing is diversity. We want to make sure that our company, when it hires, employees at different levels, we have enough diversity in the workforce, because diverse workforce is something that drives innovation, creative thinking, outside the box way of looking at things, and coming up with several alternative solutions for the same problem. So, encouraging diversity at all levels in the organization is extremely important. Equal employment opportunities company, right? EEO company. They say that we encourage people from all diverse backgrounds, which could be age, gender, race, physical attributes, cultures, and whatever you want to talk about, LGBT. So obviously, we want to make sure we have enough representation from every part of the society, and that's the key. So we spoke about types of workplace diversity. This is all that it is. Any questions you have, you can ask me, or else, yeah, then you have these acts: Equal Employment Opportunity to Prevent Discrimination, Disabilities Act, where you should make those reasonable accommodations. And I know for a fact that you have the Title IX training given to employees at New York Tech. We as faculty take that, where we know what is acceptable, what are the do's and don'ts. And if we find some discriminatory practices against students, against staff, or against other colleagues, we know that there is a Title IX office where we have to go report, and all our, what are the rights that we have, what are the responsibilities that we share. We go through this training every year, and we need to take the exam to make sure that we understand workforce diversity is important, and discrimination in any form is not going to be tolerated, and it has to be reported. You cannot be silent when you see an instance of discrimination happening at the workplace. So all these legislations are really important in ensuring that diversity is taken care of, and discrimination in all forms can be removed from the workplace. So workplace feels a secure place. You get the due recognition and respect that you deserve. So we just finished off this chapter. So if you have questions, you can ask me, or else we are done for today.